Hello, and welcome to Wise Children's Detention with me, Emma Rice. We're back. Well, back online anyway. Like everyone else, we're not quite sure when or if we'll be back in an actual theatre, but that doesn't stop us working and dreaming. Astonishingly, last week we managed to virtually assemble the entire company of our upcoming production of Wuthering Heights, our co-production with the National Theatre. We looked a magnificent and eccentric bunch over Zoom, all in our different bedrooms and living rooms, all delighted to see other new and familiar faces, and excited to dare to imagine a time when we might actually create together, play together, and tell stories again. The purpose of this Zoom call was to read through the first draft of the script I've been working on. Now, I rarely do read-throughs in my usual process. I prefer to start work musically and physically and instinctively, but Wuthering Heights is such a complex beast. It needs some intellect thrown into the mix as well. I really wanted to hear the words in the actors' mouths rather than just hearing them rattling around in my own head. I wanted a clue as to how long it might run. No one wants to spend 4 hours in the theatre. And I wanted to feel whether the overall arc of the story is beginning to work. I'm almost obsessive about how to keep ahead of the audience. I like to hook them into the narrative at just the right point and to give them surprises just when they need them. Now, this read-through, however unusual, was invaluable. So I'm now busy cutting and shaping the next draft using all the discoveries we made. But I don't want to sound too fancy. It was also the perfect excuse to see everyone and keep the Wise Children community afloat. Community's been a recurring theme of recent weeks. I've been busy making shows for our new online radio station as part of our lockdown project. We air one every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. I call up an old friend and a colleague, and we each choose some pieces of music and we talk about them and remember. I've had a great time digging through the archive and have enjoyed the rare chance to reflect and reminisce. There are some real treats in there, so do have a listen if you get a chance. We call them Lockdown Tea and Biscuits, and I think they give a really special, personal and honest insight into the amazing relationships that have fueled my work for decades. Today, though, I thought it might be good for us to take a closer look at the show I was rehearsing when lockdown happened, Malory Towers. Now, I made this show originally last summer. Remember the heat wave? Well, we certainly do. We were in the passenger shed at Bristol Temple Mead Station, building a new venue and getting a show ready. I have never been hotter, and not in a good way. The show, however, was a delight. So when producer David Pugh suggested taking it back out on tour, I was never going to refuse. Now, it sounds simple, but it's true. The more you work on something, the better it gets. And that is what we're in the process of doing with Malory Towers, making it even better. In case you don't know, Malory Towers is a series of books by classic children's author Enid Blyton. She was a prolific writer, and I was brought up on The Famous Five and The Secret Seven. The Malory Towers books are about a group of schoolgirls who attend a boarding school on the Cornish cliffs, Malory Towers, if you hadn't guessed. Now, the 6 volumes chart their adventures and the life lessons they navigate. Blyton has drawn deliciously strong and archetypal characters, personalities that I feel I recognise, even from my own Nottingham Comprehensive School days. The books are funny, they're beautifully well observed, and have a hearteningly strong moral compass. As Miss Grayling, the formidable head teacher of Malory Towers, puts it, she suggests that the girls should become good, strong women that the world can lean on. Kindness, tolerance, fair play ripple through these stories, and I loved turning them into a stage show and reimagining these values for a modern world. Now, adapting these books was not without its challenges. There are horses, there's a clifftop rescue, there's an open-air swimming pool and Miss Grayling herself, and they all needed a theatrical storytelling solution. Today, I want to talk a bit about how we used animation and video in this production, and how the process developed and evolved over the months and years that we work on this project. It was an early decision to use technology in this production and declare it. I felt there was a danger that these books might seem twee or irrelevant to a modern audience. So I decided that making a bold, contemporary and visual statement would immediately surprise and subvert the audience's expectations. And I thought this might help us in a really useful way. Here's a clip from the final rehearsal run-through at Keswick, just before the lockdown was announced. We'll then cut to the 2019 company archive recording, where you can see and hear the show in all its eventual glory. The girls have just boarded the train at Paddington and are on their way to Malory Towers for the very first time.
Well, Malory Towers, here we come! My lord, you go tower! Yeah, I'm old! Maybe crossing kids now, my lord, you go tower! The train is coming, you better get to the kids right. You better sit your house in a print, you know the train's gonna be here tonight.
What's it like, Alicia? What's what like? Malory Towers, of course.
Oh, well, it's big and old, with 4 big towers with turrets and high windows. It's not really beautiful, but it is majestic, as if it hadn't been built like an ordinary building at all, as if it had been grown out of all of the souls of the girls that went before.
Don't you hear the whistle blowing? Hear the bells are tolling. Hear the engine exhausting friends. You know the train's gonna be here tonight. Oh, tell us more, Alicia.
Yes, do tell us more. Well, there's games, swimming, tennis, and running if you fancy it. But swimming's the best, just you wait. And there's math, science, history, and art. Oh, and lots of boring French lessons.
French?
I can and bear it. Miss Grayling will make sure that we all learn as much as we can.
Is she a very strict headmistress?
We'll find out soon enough. Will there be music? I will die without the music.
I shall die full stop. It all sounds tedious in the extreme. In Switzerland, you get to walk with a book on your head.
Before she enters the pearly gates of heaven, imagine you can hear this train blow. She blows her power, Lord, so low. You know the train's gonna be here tonight. Oh, don't worry, everyone. It won't all be work. There'll be fun and feasts and midnight adventures. There's even a play to put on at the end of term. It's a Malory Towers tradition.
Oh, play! I'd like to be in it if I'm good enough. My sister always says I'm loud enough to be an actor.
You have got a wonderful loud voice, Daryl. Someone like you could never perform in a play, Mary Lou. I wouldn't know. I've never been to one.
I've been to lots. Too many, I'd say.
Well, whatever you think, we have to do one. It's tradition.
I love tradition.
And I love stories. I feel like I'm in one now. I feel like I'm Alice about to tumble down the rabbit hole. Ah, sinner man, don't think you can ride this train. You better set your house in order, friends. You know the train's gonna be here.
What's that?
Train's gonna be here. The sea, I can see the sea. Train's gonna be here tonight.
Right, so I'm now going to introduce you to Simon Baker. Simon is by trade an award-winning sound designer and has sound designed all my shows for the last 12 years. He also does all the digital output, that was me banging into a door, does all the digital output for Wise Children, and also taught himself how to animate and do video design for our production of Malory Towers. Now, don't worry, we are isolated, but we live together, so it's allowed, I promise, it's allowed for us to be close. Let me introduce you to Simon Baker.
Oh, hello. Well, this isn't weird.
This is his study. We're going to swap to a different camera. So, Simon Baker, Can you explain how it happened that you transitioned or expanded from being a sound designer into being a video designer?
Well, it was largely necessity in that I knew the Malory script. We'd had the Malory script for a long time. You'd been wanting to make the show for a long time. So I knew there were an awful lot of video elements in it. And Wise Children, being a new company, had taken on this enormous project of building the theatre. And we'd sort of been dividing our time between worrying about building a theatre and looking at the production. And I think somehow the video content hadn't really slipped through the net, but we'd taken our eye off how we were going to deliver it. We hadn't really thought through, none of us had really looked at the script and gone, well, there's quite a lot to do, isn't there? So it was only really when Leslie's model images first arrived, and we were probably a bit behind by that point, nothing to do with Leslie's delivery time, but to do with us as a company. I looked at Leslie's model and thought, wow, it is a big projection surface. We're pretty committed to video by this point. Me and the sound team had looked after video on Wise Children. We hadn't done the content, but we'd done the sort of technical delivery for Beth and Stu.
Beth Carter and Stuart Mitchell, who had done a fantastic Bristol-based artists who had done the content for Wise Children.
And we talked to them about doing a little bit for Malory Towers, doing the Midsummer Night's Dream sequence. So we knew we had that bit. And I knew that between me, Charlie, Jay and the rest of the team, we could program video and we could work out projectors and we could deal with that element. So then it was really the rest of the content. So I sat down and went through the script and listed every effect shot that I thought we were going to need. And I've spent most of my life consumed with Star Wars and the making of Star Wars, which came into its own because I sort of just knew what a George Lucas ILM storyboard looked like. So I made one. I sort of sat down and went through the script page by page and listed out every possible bit of projection we were going to need. And so whether it was stars or whether it was sky or whether it was waves or what it was, and produced this rather large, slightly scary storyboard, which I then took to you and went, I think we're in trouble.
I can vouch that is what happened. And then I think we all got a bit scared, and in the usual Emma Rice way, I kept saying it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But we were still thinking that we'd find a video designer at this point. You were just doing the legwork about what this job might be so that we wouldn't waste any more time finding the right person. But my memory is that you came to me after doing the storyboard and beginning to reveal how big this job was.
Yeah.
You said, I've been doing a few sketches for the train journey about ways that I think this might be manageable for a video designer. Do you want to come and have a look? And I was expecting to see just some rough ideas. And you showed me the beginnings of the train sequence. So
I did start to think, how could I chip away at some of the simpler things? And was there going to be anything in the work that I could do? And so I was hunting around and trying different things. And I'd experimented early in the year. We'd made that photo shoot making of thing that I made with Steve Tanner and you and the company. And at the very end of that, there was a little sort of hand-drawn, looked a bit like a comic book image at the end. And I thought, well, if we could apply that kind of technique to the actual show, then maybe we can find an aesthetic which looks a bit hand-drawn or a bit printed or slightly vintage or has a slight otherworldliness to it. And I also thought that might disguise the fact that we were going to be using an awful lot of stock photography and stock footage. I spent a long time trying to figure out, and when I say a long time trying to figure out, literally Googling, how do you make a transparent layer in Photoshop, or how do you make it was proper.
Is that why I didn't see you for several weeks?
Yeah. And you were quite cross about that as well.
Like, what are you doing up there?
You can't still be working on that.
So we've got the moving images that she was translating into a hand-drawn or animated, illustrated feel.
Yeah.
We've got the moving images, which was the train journey.
Yeah.
How did you get those images? How did you start working on that?
Anybody that's ever done the train journey from Paddington to Cornwall, it's epic, isn't it?
Forever.
It just goes. It never gets any closer, Cornwall. And there's an importance in the story about the girls being isolated from their parents and being isolated from adults, really. The adults actually, other than Miss Grayling, adults they don't have much to do with the girls in Malory Towers, because it's about how the girls function and form and build their own relationships. So it was important to get that sense of isolation. And the only idea I really had was those old maps you used to see in movies, which was always a great illustrative technique in those sort of 1940s, 1950s journey films, where you'd see an aeroplane fly over and then it would fade to a map and you'd see little red dots. And I wanted that feel. And I thought that would be quite good to say, here we are in London and we're going to go to Reading and then we'll get to Plymouth, and just when you think you're almost there in Cornwall, you've got to get past Exeter and you keep going. And I drew a map. I got an image of a map and literally, followed the train line round and then worked out in After Effects how I was going to move the map and how I was going to follow the little red line I'd made. And again,
put it into the scene. It reminds me of the Dad's Army title sequence.
Well, there's an awful lot of Dad's Army ripples through all my work, really.
And mine. And mine. It's one of the things that binds us together, isn't it, Dad's Army? So we've got the moving map.
Yeah.
And we've got the moving images and the feeling of animation. But what I was getting at is those images were not stock images. Where did you get the moving images from? Well,
the moving image on the train, I filmed it. I sort of didn't want to say. I actually filmed it on my phone. And it's the journey as you come into Westbury Station. And there's lots of fields and it's pretty open landscape and not too much modern architecture. It feels a little bit 1940s, that journey. And any little bits of modern feel that we could see every now and again, you might see electricity pylon or you see a modern building. I coloured out. I went through frame by frame and... I love this. I just coloured out. I did come up and ask you what you were doing one day. Yeah. It was painstaking. You took out every modern reference on that whole bit of film that you took. Yeah. Yeah, there's no loop in that film. It's actually in real time. So, and then I've since discovered a much quicker way of doing it as well. That's always the way. But I did do it. I literally took it frame by frame, the whole 4 minutes of it. So what you've just described is a phenomenal practical, technological and storytelling process that managed to animate that sequence, which is basically some actors and some chairs, into a really dynamic sense of movement, journeying, adventure. And what I remember is when you said, come up and see the little ideas that I've worked on, and you showed me that, my jaw hit the floor. Oh. I was knocked out by what you'd done. I'm knocked out from the aesthetic. So at that moment, you became the video designer for Malory Towers, whether you wanted it or not. And you didn't really want it, did you? No, well, I suppose I'd never considered, and I still don't consider myself, I don't put my hand up and say I'm the video designer. It was just, for me, it was one of those things, as a member of a creative team and as a member of Wise Children, of your team, is that we're all collectively looking in to see what we can do, what we can add. And companies like Wise Children have a limited resource, yet we're trying to create these really ambitious shows. So at some point, somebody has to go, well, we'll give that a go. And I get quite a lot of grief off of my sound team. So why have you got us mixed up in this again? We don't know anything about video. Well, thank the gods that you do, because, you rescued the film idea. And as you say, Les had designed this amazing set that was designed for video. So we needed content. Yeah. And the other thing that I suppose I want to say is that because you had engaged so much with the script and the idea that I'd created, that the thought of bringing somebody from outside the team at quite a late stage felt really difficult. Well, that's what was worrying me, was that we know some great, and we've worked with some great video people, I've worked with some great video people, but trying to bring somebody in, and we were 6 weeks out of rehearsal. I was nervous because I thought if we've got, I think it was 26 or 32, I can't remember, but I thought if it takes a week to do each shot, we can't do this, we're never going to make it. So I think I started 6 weeks prior to rehearsal. And rehearsal's a really key marker because for us, and it's the thing we've learned, is that we try and get everything done by day one of rehearsal. Yeah. So by the time we go into rehearsal, we can just concentrate on rehearsing the show.
And delivery and rhythm
yeah,
and over the overarch of the story.
Rather than, I think if we'd have gone into rehearsal not quite knowing how we were going to do it, we'd have lost confidence or looked for another solution, or, you know, all of those things would have happened.
So with the power of Simon Baker's OCD, Google, YouTube, learning videos, the iPhone, and your amazing visual ideas, and the way that you turned a children's storybook into something, we ended up with that train journey. So you've now been cast against your will, not completely against your will, as video designer.
Yep.
We've given Stuart Mitchell and Beth Carter the job of creating the content for the final Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
So we've got our poetry at the end. But you were still looking at me saying, Emma, we haven't cracked this. We've got some really big problems that we need to find solutions to. So what were the problems?
Well, you rather brilliantly in the script had written things like, we see Daryl climb up the cliffs, run along a diving board and jump into a pool. And
What's your issue with that?
Well, exactly. And I thought, well, there's lots of ways we can do this. But we seemed pretty intent there was going to be a video thing rather than a physical theatre thing.
Well, I thought it would be really funny to see the animated girl jump in and then the real girl pop out. And in my head, I thought they could be really wet, so there'd be a big puff of water as well.
And I remember having that conversation with you and you saying, but it's really easy. They should just be stick figures. And I was sat there thinking, yeah, they should be stick figures. But how do you do that, though? How do you do stick figures climbing and running? So we tried lots of different... I tried lots of different ways of achieving that. And then I can't really reveal how we did it in the end, but they are stick figures that do climb and run across and jump into the pool. And I made them, I suppose I applied a sort of sound design thing to them. I made everything in layers and component parts so we could work out that timing once we did do it in the rehearsal room a little bit, but then we worked out that timing once we got into the space. So again, I did take quite a lot of what I know about making sound effects and apply it to making video content.
And it was really funny. The fact that you went for a very simple aesthetic, the stick figures, kept it quite childlike. It's quite early in the show, so you don't want to be getting too, as a director, I don't want to be getting too elaborate visually.
Yeah.
But I also made you put a little character onto every stick figure. So they've all jump in a different way.
Yeah.
They all wave in a different way. So there's a huge amount of narrative coming through what looks like a really simple idea.
I remember that. I remember being very pleased with myself that I'd made a figure run across the diving board, jump into the pool, and then you coming up and saying, well, they all need to look different.
Yeah, Alicia needs to be a show-off.
Come on, they all need to jump differently. So, yeah.
What were the other challenges?
There were some surprising ones which were just learning new techniques. So we had to do the writing on the chalkboard. That was a tricky thing to do. And we had the big one, which I didn't really understand how we were going to pull it off, was Miss Grayling. Because Miss Grayling, actually it's not true. I thought when I read it and I was going back through it, I thought, well, the worst case, if I can't think of anything, Miss Grayling's going to become a voiceover. But I knew that wasn't really what you wanted. You wanted to see some sort of presence of her.
Well, that's interesting because that actually goes right back to the ideas of the project, because I always knew I wanted to work with adult actors. I didn't want to work with children for lots of reasons. Not least, I wanted great actors with great skills who could take on a tour, so I wasn't looking to work with children. So it's quite hard when you've got adults on stage. How do you differentiate between the adults in the story, literally by scale? So I either needed to find a really massive actor who wanted to do 2 speeches and then sit in a dressing room or find a different solution. And I felt that animation was going to give me the scale. Miss Grayling could be bigger than the actors on stage. But that, again, dumped a great big problem at your feet. So how did you solve it? Well,
I knew, because I'd actually done the diving board sequence by that point, I knew that the way we'd done that, which was by using very, very easy, cheap sort of 2D flash animation, that wasn't going to give us the detail or the stature or the poise or drama that Miss Grayling needed. So we had done green screen work before. I hadn't done it, but I'd been involved in project. We'd done
Brief
Brief
Encounter.
Encounter.
Yeah, which has got so much green screen.
So
We've witnessed it for years.
We were very used to standing in green screen studios looking at it. And then at one point I just thought we should just do it with an actor and we should do it on green screen, as if I knew how to do that. So again, back to Google, how do you luma key green from... and I bought from Amazon on the day of the recording some green baize fabric and some poles and some lamps, and in a spare rehearsal room in, where were we, Toynbee Hall.
Yep.
We set up a green screen. Les Brotherston sent down some costume and a wig.
And I put them on.
You put them on.
It's like a cottage industry, isn't it?
And we created Miss Grayling.
Yeah. And I looked so like my grandmother, who was a school teacher in the 1930s and 40s. I just couldn't believe it. Or Margaret Rutherford, one or the other.
It was a good day, wasn't it?
It was a really good day. And I love the fact, it feels very Hitchcock that I make a little appearance.
Yeah.
It was, again, we were keeping the team quite tight at that point because I didn't have to explain. I knew exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I knew the quality of physicality I wanted from Miss Grayling and also the gravitas of her. And we just did it, but it was so successful. I think we should have a look.
We should have a look.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening, Miss Grayling.
Welcome to Malory Towers. It's hard to imagine when everything is so strange and new, but one day you will leave this school and go out into the world as young women.
So, fast forward, we opened the show at the passenger shed, huge, beautiful, heartwarming success. And David Pugh, the producer, made plans to bring it back on tour. I said yes. We all said we're going to do exactly the same show again, just, buff it up.
Nice and quick.
Nice and quick, easy, simple, all those words that you love to hear. Mm-hmm. And then what did I do? I decided that we would not use the actors at the end of Act 1. I would change the Clifftop Rescue to animation. I had good reasons for it before you get cross, because it was hard the end of Act 1. We had harnesses to get into.
Yeah.
We literally had to pace the whole of the end of the act in order to get Vinnie, Heaven and Rose Chalou up onto the top of the set, strapped into harnesses and hanging down.
Yeah.
And Azuka Hoyle as well. So, and it felt like it was stopping the action and then wasn't quite as magnificent as you wanted, which always happens with actors in harnesses.
Yeah.
So I had the great idea, well, let's just use the form that we've already worked into, animation, and really get the picture book, really get the jeopardy, really get the excitement. And I sort of forgot to tell you, didn't I?
You didn't really tell me at all, no. And then it was just, and by the point you had told me, it was just assumed that's how we were going to do it.
Yeah. Well,
So-
once you've had a good idea, you can't put it back in the box, can you?
No. And then, so I was a bit cross. I thought, well, I generally don't know how to do that. And I thought, if we do it on video, it needs to be, well, our very first idea is that we would just film that sequence in green screen. And we put a different background to it and we colour out harnesses and things, and we would show it like a film clip on the back wall. But that somehow didn't feel particularly satisfying. It also, it was going to be really difficult to do as well.
Really difficult because of gravity and harnesses, but also we would have been replicating the slightly hefty idea that we'd already tried, and it felt like we needed something lighter on its feet.
Which I felt then meant we had to go to some sort of animation to do it. And I did a little bit of research. I was in the middle of another show at the time as well, I think. It was busy. But I started researching. I thought, well, if we sent it out to 2D animation, let's find a 2D animation company to do it. I think the lead time was something like 6 months, and the budget was, it was tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds, which we couldn't afford. I thought, okay, well, what about if we CGI it? If we farm it out.
What's CGI?
Computer generated images. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
begins with I. I thought we'd farm it out. But again, the lead time was immense and the budget was immense. But in looking at what we could do with CGI, in the back of my mind, I thought I knew that I could create a 3D character. I knew there was a piece of software in Adobe called Fuse, which would allow me to create a character which you could pan around and look at in 3 dimensions. And I also had seen a way of, online, just by accident, by researching something else, a way of animating, of rigging that 3D character as a puppet, and then applying a predefined set of movements to that character. And I thought, well, if I can somehow find enough movements or create or make my own movements of that little animated puppet, then maybe we could create it. I could create it. But it was a big maybe. I didn't really know how to do it. And there was an awful lot of, and I went down I took a couple of wrong turns for a while as well. I thought and again, we were talking about a very short lead time, weren't we? It was 8 weeks maybe. And of course, 8 weeks in freelancer time is not 8 free weeks. That's just 8 weeks from the moment the idea happens, the moment it needs to be in a rehearsal room. But of course, there's loads of other work happening during that. So I was stressed for time and made a couple of mistakes. I thought I could teach myself Blender, which is the computer animating software, and there's no way I could.
Is it a dating app?
Is it, in fact, no. I think it has a similar logo. But I couldn't learn that. I couldn't learn Cinema 4D quick enough. There was loads of things I just couldn't do. But I had, in trying to learn that, had found this way. I'd found this library, this palette of moves, which are largely all from, fortunately for us, adventure gaming engines. So they're the kind of moves you might see Lara Croft do in Tomb Raider. And I thought, well, maybe there's something exciting. Maybe this will work. Maybe if I can find a shot of Mary Lou running and we could just see the back of her in a fixed camera and we can see Daryl running onto a cliff top, maybe we can pull this off, which is what we did.
So the people watching this have now got a taste of what it is to work with Simon Baker, because you've just described all the difficulties, all the hard work, all the maybes. And can I say that the moments in my life when I get to walk up these stairs and you get to show me something, you always surprise me. So when you showed me what you've been working on, I could not believe the level of detail. I could not believe the excitement, the narrative drive that you found, the jeopardy, I mean, there's a laugh out loud moment for me as well, that they do things that are so surprising. And what you've done single-handedly and secretly in this room is that you've taken a vintage children's book and my adaptation, and you've built the form within the story from a moving map and then some moving images that are telling the story of location into almost a child's drawing, a comedy sequence of a diving pool, to this moment, a cliff top rescue where your heart is in your mouth. And it is so dramatic and it's so impressive that you leave the audience on an absolute high, and we should watch it. But I want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary Lou! Mary Lou, where are you? Where are you, Mary Lou? Help me! Mary Lou, where are you? I'm here! Help me! Where are you? I can't see in this rain! I'm here! Over here! I fell and I can't hold on much longer! Help me! I'm here, Mary Lou! I found you! you up. No! What have I done? You didn't do anything. You just have to think straight. Oh, what are we going to do? Oh, hold on. Hold on until someone finds us. But what if we fall? If we fall together. I'm scared. Don't be scared. Be brave. Say it with me. If we fall together.
Isn't it amazing? I feel that Simon has really captured the drama and the jeopardy and the friendship in a way that I couldn't have even imagined alone. So thanks for watching and spending time with us today. The only thing we ask of you in return is that when the show comes back and goes out on the road where it belongs, that you all come and see it. My goodness, theatre is going to need all the support it can get to find its way out of this nightmare. And anyway, if you want to know what happens to Daryl and Mary Lou, you're just going to have to join us in your local theatre as soon as is humanly possible. So thank you, goodbye, and loads of love from all of us at Wise Children.
All the